With opening statements set to begin Monday in Donald Trump's hush money trial, the former president is railing against the case, the judge, and the prosecutors, saying and doing things many lawyers suggest he probably shouldn't.
The whole world is watching this hoax.
Donald Trump in a New York City courthouse blasting his criminal hush money trial.
New York is going down as a very corrupt place.
The former president has reason to worry, given his record in Manhattan courtrooms this year. In January, a jury found him liable for defaming E. Jean Carroll, with damages totaling $83 million. Then in February, a judge fined Trump $355 million for fraudulently inflating his empire's worth.
A fine of $355 million for doing a perfect job.
This time, a criminal jury will decide his fate and witness his behavior, which ranged this week from appearing to fall asleep in court to making surprising statements outside of it.
I was paying a lawyer and marked it down as a legal expense. That's exactly what it was.
A claim some court observers say makes much of the prosecutor's arguments for them.
That video could be played before the jury, no question.
Here with me today, author and podcast host Kara Swisher, Reihan Salam, president of the Manhattan Institute and contributing writer at The Atlantic, New York Times journalist and podcast host Lulu Garcia Navarro, and Jonah Goldberg, editor of The Dispatch and columnist at the LA Times. Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you.
So, Reihan, can Donald Trump get a fair trial in Manhattan?
Honestly, I don't see how he can. Of course, finding a jury that is going to be broad-minded and fair is going to be exceptionally difficult. But the bigger issue is that this would not be a set of charges brought up against anyone else other than Donald Trump. You have Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan prosecutor, who's notorious for not prosecuting actual crimes. And here he is taking a series of trumped-up misdemeanors and then packaging them up as a felony. I think that it's unserious.
I'm so tired of this argument. I really am.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
I am. This idea that because it's Donald Trump, that he cannot get a fair trial in the biggest city in the United States.
You've got to admit, he does not have a good record in Manhattan. He's gotten hammered in a couple of these.
Well, maybe he's wrong.
Well, yeah, but
maybe,
maybe
he's wrong.
By a
maybe
jury.
it's biased.
Yeah.
Can he get a fair trial in New York City?
Yeah, I mean, of course he can get a fair trial in New York City. And in fact, I remember at the beginning of this process, everyone was going on and on and on about how this was going to take forever to get this jury impaneled and how he wasn't going to be able to find anyone. And it has happened speedily. This judge has been actually on the ball. And what we've seen is that this trial is going to start as scheduled on Monday.
I mean, and by the way, just to be clear, judges in New York City, they're elected, right? They're oftentimes Democratic political contributors. So you're darn right. They see this as an opportunity to make a name for themselves.
Stop. Come on, it's different juries all over. He keeps losing. Every time he does this, I feel like, would you like some cheese with the wine? He's in court. He's done things. He either win or not, and he has a jury in front of him. And you can't assume everyone in New York is the same. I don't know if you live in New York. You know
I sure do. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, and I will tell you that there are a lot of folks.
I'm going to take, and I grew up in Manhattan. I'm going to take the Solomonic approach to this and cut the baby in half. I think Reihan's absolutely right that this case should not have been brought. I think the way they're stacking the charges and trying to bootstrap these things together is not very persuasive to me. And if his name weren't Donald Trump, this wouldn't have been brought. That said, I still believe in the jury system. I think he's probably going to get a hung jury. And I still think the court system is legitimate and fair, and he can get a fair trial.
Let's turn to Trump's behavior so far this week, because it's pretty extraordinary. He dozed off in court a couple of times, actually I think 3 as of Friday. Prosecutors say he's repeatedly violated a gag rule by attacking witnesses and jurors, and he seemed to admit, as we mentioned in the setup piece, that he marked payments to Michael Cohen as a legal expense. Kara, is Trump, even in week 1, his own worst enemy in this case?
Always. He thinks it works, and it works for the base, it works for fundraising. The idea that he's a victim, the grievance industrial complex will go into place. You're already seeing that in the fundraising. And, you know, this is how he behaves. He's an impulse control person now under control, and that's got to really hurt. And as to the sleeping, he's tired. I don't know what to say. He must be tired.
And you're not going to use the line that you mentioned to me earlier?
Which one?
Don Snorleone?
Don Snorleone. I do like, I have to say, once again, the internet, just when you think it's over, you're like, Don Snorleone, I think it's, what's the other one?
Fake snooze.
Fake snooze and stuff like that. I think those are great.
Well, when you're talking about Sleepy Joe and suddenly he's falling asleep.
You can't use that anymore, unfortunately for him. But one of the things that I do like is the idea of all these people, the jurors as they're coming forward, putting up all the social media stuff about him, and he's got to listen to it, because mostly he doesn't get that incoming of negativity. He gets positivity constantly. People are constantly licking him up and down, and all of a sudden he's seeing what people...
I want to pick up on that, because I was talking to Norm Eisen, who's a distinguished lawyer and has actually written a book about all of this. He was in court, and he said there was one moment this week where the judge reprimanded Trump. He doesn't get a lot of reprimands now, and he said now, Norm Eisen is not a fan of Trump, that he kind of sunk back in his chair and his chin went down and he looked like a beaten 6-year-old, he said. I mean, the lack of control for a guy who's always in control has got to be tough.
Yeah, it's not just that he's always in control, he surrounds himself with an entourage of yes men and yes women who tell him what he wants to hear, who praise him. He always flocks towards praise. He's never kept waiting. And the problem is this is a very controlled environment, and he's used to behaving like an escaped monkey from a cocaine study. And all of a sudden he has to sit there soberly.
Where do you get these analogies?
I don't know. He has to sit there quietly and behave himself. And I think it revs him up to misbehave more once he gets out of the courtroom.
There's no phones allowed, so he must be like.
Here's one thing that I think is really worth noting. One thing that Donald Trump did while in New York, while in Manhattan, was go to Harlem to visit the bodega where Jose Alba was a guy working, as a clerk there. He was the victim of a violent crime. He defended himself. Then Alvin Bragg brought charges, which he immediately dropped because Manhattanites were outraged about the fact that a guy who was defending himself was getting charged, while the other guy was likely to get off scot-free. I think Donald Trump is actually using this as an opportunity, whether you like it or not, to, for example, visit an NYPD cop who was killed on the job and go to his wake.
Let me just say, that may help him on the front page of the New York Post. It's not going to help him in the courtroom. Anyway, I want to pick up on yet another legal case that Donald Trump's involved in. This Thursday, the Supreme Court is going to hear Donald Trump's case for total immunity for a president involving official acts. Reihan, how many justices do you think will side with Trump either for complete immunity or partial immunity?
It's hard for me to say. I will say that I think that Chief Justice Roberts is going to be open to the argument that the D.C. Circuit used very loose reasoning when issuing their decision here. You could say that, no, he is not immune to all criminal prosecutions. But when you're looking at criminal laws that have some bearing on a president's official duties, that's something that you want to be very careful about. And that's not coming from Donald Trump's lawyers. That's coming from Walter Dellinger, who was President Clinton's Solicitor General. He made that case way back in 1995. You got to be really careful when you're risking having criminal laws interfere with the president's official duties.
Yeah.
Like trying to overturn an election?
Yeah, I was about to say.
Look, then you make a determination based on the specific facts of the case. But I think that there are some cases, like going to the Justice Department and saying, hey, maybe we need to investigate something. You might not like it, but that could be within the scope of a president's official duties.
Lulu, quickly, how many justices will side with Trump that when it comes to official acts?
We always know the same three are always going to take his side, and they are Neil Gorsuch, they are Samuel Alito, and they are his good pal,
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. Oh, you all know the name already.
That's ridiculous. Gorsuch is the most pro-criminal defendant justice on the court, regardless of the politics of it. That's why he votes with liberals all the time. I think there is zero chance that any justice will endorse Trump's view of complete and total immunity to criminal things. Trump will lose that 9-0. Whether there's a qualified immunity dependent on specific cases and circumstances, maybe.